Welcome to charts today, energy and sentiment weighing on commodities again at the moment. So we're seeing here that sentiment just globally is weak. We're seeing the dollar still quite strong, short term recovering on Friday. We're not quite yet back above the cloud, but dollar strength is still the dominant theme. Euro still looking weak against the dollar and falling from Friday's high, and the yen, we're seeing the dollar looking stronger here. Sterling actually did regain quite a lot of strength in just holding on to those gains, and the euro against sterling, we're seeing sterling looking stronger here as well, and against the Swiss franc as well, sterling looking strong. So stronger sterling, weaker euro, and the dollar strength is the thing that's constantly dominating. We saw markets in the US were selling off on Friday, so stock market sentiment is still pretty low. We're seeing the DAX a little change today, and the FTSE down very slightly, but Asian stocks were still falling away. Hong Kong especially lower. And if we take a look at gold, gold actually looking strong, holding on to its gains, and also US 10-year yields still looking pretty bullish at 3.2%. So that sentiment weighing through, and again a big upside target here of 3.39% on the short-term chart. So we're starting to see that bond yields strength returning. Looking at the energy mix, Brent crude lower this morning, only slightly lower, but we do see, and we have had a bit of a recovery in the last hour. So we were much lower at one point this morning. Starting to turn just negatively bearish here. This is the long-term chart, the weekly chart, and we've got this downside target of $60 for Brent, and $70 and $71, which we're now getting closer to. I mean, amazing really that these targets were given back in the 80s and the mid 70s, and we're just seeing that pushing lower all the time. That's on the 60-minute chart. If we look at the correlation with the dollar, it's fairly sedate at the moment. And if we look at the 1-minute chart, if you're trading crude, this is where you're going to see your targets coming through. All of this data is coming from Thomson Reuters Icon, of course. So we're sitting with targets of 71 and 70.90. That's looking like where we're going to head next. So still looking pretty bearish. WTI, much the same. We do have this target on WTI, which has actually been there for a little while. We've now got 62, 10, 61. So we are seeing targets to the downside, and again 59 was a target that was given back at 63, and that's looking like where we're going to head. The big mover is actually US NatGas. Had a big jump on Friday, and now making 9-month highs, looking like we're going to take out these high levels, and just looking extremely bullish. We've got a target of 4.1 now. We had 375 as a target and 396. So $4 for NatGas is starting to look quite doable. And if we look back at the NatGas chart, we've only just touched that back in 2016. So we'd be making four-year highs in doing that. So it's starting to look quite a lot stronger. And so we're just seeing that movement there. If you are trading US NatGas, keep an eye on these 1-minute targets. Push to a new high above 351 would activate that target. So quite key that we're seeing that jump in prices. Heating oil following crude, as we'd expect, quite a lot of downside targets there. Bob, also we have downside targets hanging over us, so we're seeing that as well. Coal this morning is down just under 1.5%. Again, this is on Thomson Reuters Icon data. If you have Trayport, you'll be seeing higher liquidity on the screen, of course, so you'll possibly have different targets. But $91 has been the target on the short-term chart since really the mid-90s, and that's roughly where we've got to. Not quite there, but it's still a bearish-looking picture on coal. And taking a look at Richards Bay, we saw again just that falling away, not as liquid obviously API 2. Looking at emissions, the emissions have been falling away this morning, just down some 2%, and we saw big falls really on Friday from 1740. We just pushed all the way lower there. We're seeing the correlation with crude is quite high, so crude falling away is not really helping the emissions price, and we've got these downside targets some 8% lower, but on the 1%, on the 1 minute chart, this is really where you get the good picture for emissions. So we've got this 1608 target, but we still do have very short term an uptrend. It's just there's not much to play for at the target, so emissions just coming under pressure there. Looking to gas prices, NBP down significantly this morning, down some 3%. It's just really diving away here, and most of all, we're seeing again the correlation with crude is quite high, so weaker crude is really having an impact. Looking like a bit of a head and shoulders here on NBP, so we are seeing that that is a pressure for selling. We've got long-term targets to the downside, and if we take a look at the 1 minute chart, we haven't yet activated this price, but if we fall to 65 pence per firm, we will activate 60.50. So just keep an eye on those 1 minute charts. And again, on Trayport data, you might have slightly different targets if you're running Updata on Trayport. Taking a look at TTF, we're seeing here downside target of 2183. So that is actually activated. That's 7% lower, and we're seeing TTF off about 3%. German gas looking pretty much lower at NCG, looking lower, and Italian prices as well falling, as you might expect. German power baseload looking at 2% down this morning. Again, high correlation with oil at the moment, really looking quite toppy and falling away, almost like a descending triangle here. Downside potential is pretty low. We've got 46, 45, 47, so we are seeing really these targets kicking in all the time. We do have some upside targets, but those are counter trend. We'd favour those downside targets on German power. So that's anywhere between 1.6 and 4.8% lower in the price. So we are seeing that. French power also downside targets pressuring us there. Looking at the Nordic power market, we're also seeing quite a lot of downside targets kicking in here as well. So we're seeing targets to 2, 4, 5% lower, and if we look at some of the other markets, Dutch power down quite significantly, all following German power basically, and Polish power falling away as well. This is the exchange price kicking in there. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.